going to the Facebooks to share. Because I stream live to my author page, and then I share it on my personal page.
I'm not a joyride, a hit and run. I thought I loved you and you thought I was fun. I'm moving on down the road. Watch me as I go, watch me as I go. Should I look both ways before you cross me, babe? 'Cause I don't break for boys. I'm moving on. I'm moving on. Got nothing left to say. Let's be on my way. Best of luck. I'm moving on. I'm moving on. I got a new love. He runs for miles. 67 fastback. Oh, it's just my style. We're headed down the road. Just enjoy the show. Watch me as I go. Shut up, both ways before you cross me, baby. 'Cause I don't break for boys. I'm moving on. I'm moving on. Got nothing left to say. Let's be on my way. Best of luck. I'm moving on. I'm moving on.
What's up, everyone who's watching now live and watching the replay later? Although the replay later only counts for Facebook, because I go into YouTube and trim these videos down so that this countdown nonsense doesn't start or doesn't exist anymore on YouTube. But all the Facebook watchers will see it, because I found it a bit too clunky to edit post-production videos on Facebook. But YouTube makes it real simple. So we're going to get going here in about 37 seconds for a special Tuesday edition. How exciting is that? Tuesday edition of The Altar. A little more sound in my headphones. Thank you. Thank you, self. If I want it, I gotta do it myself. Hopefully you're not moving on. Hopefully you're moving in. Wait, not really. Like, don't move in. That's not what I meant. I just meant don't move on from this stream. Stay and hang out with me for a bit on this special Tuesday afternoon episode of The Altar. Welcome. I'm your host, Colby Martin. Hi to you on Facebook. Hi to you on YouTube. I stream to Twitch every week, but so far nobody watches because I think I need to play more games or something. Maybe I'll play Clash Royale on the side while hosting The Altar. I don't know. Is that how Twitch works? And then welcome to you on the Twitters. I'm glad that you're here. This is my weekly live stream show where I explore ideas that deserve and need to be sacrificed at the altar of change and growth and transformation for the sake of bettering ourselves and bettering the world around us. I'm really excited to hang out with you today. I've got a special guest. I'm not going to waste a ton of time. I like to waste a little bit of time, but I'm not going to waste a ton of time. I want to get into the meat of the show. Welcome everyone to The Altar. Glad you're here. Well, this is lovely. I wondered who would be able to join me today on a Tuesday afternoon, since I know most of you have your alarm set for Wednesday afternoon. But you're here today on a special Tuesday edition. So thank you for joining us, Vince. Good to have you, buddy. Hi, Haley. So glad you're with us. Yo to you too, Haley. Hi, Brooke. Thanks for hanging out with me today. Odette, thank you. Odette loves the shirt. This is one of my favorites, Odette. Can I tell you why? Two reasons. One, it's a nice, breathable, soft material. So as it's warming up here in Southern California, which yesterday and today, warm days, and I'm here in this garage, which has approximately zero insulation. Actually, is it possible for a building to have like negative insulation where not only is it not insulated, but it makes it hotter when it's hot and colder when it's cold? Because whatever causes that, this garage has it. So it's real warm here right now, but it was freezing in the morning. So I've got a little space heater right here that I use from about 8 a.m. to 8:30, 9 a.m. and then quickly shut that thing off, open the windows, turn the fan on, and try to survive the rest of the day. So great breathable shirt, Brooke, Adette, although Brooke, maybe you're curious too. But then also one of the main reasons why I love it is because I found a line of clothing from Express that is tall sizing, because I'm a tall human, but I get medium. So it's got, the slender, because I'm a slender human, but I'm tall. And so regular clothing just never really fits. The mediums work well around like the chest and the torso, but then they are like crop top shirts. And then larges have the length, but then I end up swimming in them. And so the Express medium tall line has been a godsend to me. So I have like 3 versions of this shirt. Anyway, that's a lot of information. Hi, Shane. Glad to have you here, bud. Heather Hickerson, welcome to the show. Thanks for hanging out with me today. Gustavo, here we are. Tuesday. Let's do this. Lovely surprise, says Brooke. Hey, I got a special guest that I'm excited to get to here in a minute. But before I get to my special guest, I would love to ask you, the viewers who are watching live, if you're watching this after the fact on my YouTube or Facebook channel, you can still respond to the question and leave a comment, of course. And I'll see the comment because I see all the comments that come in through the video. But you may not get a response because this is kind of for those who are together watching live. But here is my viewer sound off, and I've got the question for you. Let's see if you can answer it. Oh, wait. Oh yeah, there it is. All right, here's the question for today. Sound off. Let me know. What was the question? Oh yeah. What food and or meal, so this can be like a particular food item or a go-to meal. What do you have more than anything else? What is like your go-to food or meal item that you might have multiple times a week? Okay. Let me know this is the sort of hard-hitting, investigative, deep spiritual conversations we have here on the altar. What is it that you eat more than anything else? I would say for me, that the burritos and or tacos. In our family, we sometimes use those terminologies interchangeably. Even though I think technically a burrito is fully enclosed, whereas a taco has openness to it. But sometimes we call burritos tacos. I don't know. Don't worry about it. But we have that in our family sometimes almost every week at some point, usually multiple times a week, either homemade tacos or drive-through store burritos. We live in San Diego, which there's just taco shops and burrito shops galore. Like the real stuff. Do you know what I mean? I was doing a live stream the other day, and I mentioned burritos multiple times in a different context. And one of the people watching commented, and I didn't read the comment till maybe 20 minutes later, but I saw this comment say, now I'm going to have Taco Bell for lunch. And I was finding myself, I couldn't figure out why this person was mentioning Taco Bell. I'm like, when in the show did we talk about Taco Bell? Why is this person suddenly like, oh, now I want Taco Bell? And it finally occurred to me, it's because I mentioned the burritos earlier, and I happen to know that this person lives up in Oregon, and which is where I was born and raised. And anyway, my point is for many people, Taco Bell is what they think of when they think of burritos. And now that's sad to me as sort of this pretentious SoCal San Diego person. I'm like, what? Why would you ever go to Taco Bell? Especially if you want a burrito. That's the last place you'd go. But anyway, our family, myself, Mexican food, tacos, burritos, we absolutely have that more than anything else. No way, Sam. Hey, Sam, welcome to the show, man. Sour cream. This is a fantastic answer. Sour cream. So that fits well within our tacos and burritos multiple times a week, Sam. Our family goes through, like the Costco size tubs of sour cream. We go through at least one of those a week, if not like 1.5. Sometimes, like the amount of sour cream that gets used in this family, from everything from soups to tacos to dips, just all the sour creams. So Sam, you are not alone on that. Gustavo says hamburgers. Any area, or I'm sorry, any like brand or style in particular, Gustavo, or will you just take all the burgers all the time? Hey Dave, good to have you. Dave says good day, and Dave says Greek food. Live in a big Greek community. That's exciting. I don't get Greek food as often as I would like, because I love Greek food as well. We're going to take a quick detour from the food to answer Vince's question. How do you style your hair, and what product do you use? Great question. Again, this is all the deep stuff that we get into here on the altar, because it all belongs. Vince, I can chat with you offline, but I have 2 recommendations. First is a product called, or from the company Slick Hair. It's Danish brothers. They're twins, and they make products called Bivalane. And they have a fantastic pre-styling spray that adds volume and texture and hold that I spray on after towel drying, before blow drying. And then they have all sorts of waxes and clays that I recommend. And then second, Hans de Foucault creates some fantastic products such as claymation and quicksand. Okay, so there it is. One day I'll do maybe a whole separate video on my hair routine, so that just Vince, myself, and maybe one other person might be interested in that. All right. Are you laughing at me? Yeah, Gattison, you're laughing at me. I knew I'd look down and see Gattison laughing at me. Whatever. You love it. Okay. Brooke says at the Mo, Linda McCartney burgers. I don't know what that means. What are Linda McCartney burgers? Enlighten me, Brooke. Leah says pizza. Great option. Haley says roast beef and cheddar from Arby's. I haven't had Arby's in forevers, so that's really exciting. But I roast beef and cheddar, I can feel that sensation, that delicious Arby's sensation. An egg scrambled with 1 slice of pepper jack cheese. I like that, Melanie. Very specific. An egg, 1 crack. Melanie, do you whip the egg yolk up before dumping into the pan, or do you crack the egg in the pan and scramble it in real time? Curious. And then slice of pepper jack cheese. Yes, Vince affirms that none of that Taco Bell Americanized crap, but it's got to be real Mexican food. Agreed, Vince. Gustavo says, when I go to the States, I love Chick-fil-A, but here in Mexico, I just get them at any place. Thanks for clarifying on that. And Cheryl says soups. Cheryl, my wife, is very similar to that. My wife would have the soups all the time. She makes lots of really good soups. And I like soups too. I don't know if I can have them as often as other people, because at some point, like 4 bites into the soup, I'm like, okay, I've had the soup, but I still have like 50 more bites to go, and it's all the same after that, which I guess is true for all the food. 1 bite of burrito, well, the other 12 bites are going to be the same. What am I even talking? Okay, yes, whip the egg first, then add the cheese. All right, thanks. Okay, this is great. All right, moving on. Thank you for sounding off on this very important conversation. We got some really important things that we don't make sure that the curry pumpkin soup. One last soup comment. Thank you, Dave, coming in hot at the end with the curry pumpkin soup during the winter. I might actually really like that. I love curry, and I love pumpkin curry as well. All right. So I've got this series that I'm going to do here for March. Welcome to March, everybody. Today's March 1st. And here on the altar for the next several weeks, all throughout March, I'm going to do a series titled Makers in March. And the idea here is that I'm going to have guests on all throughout the month who are making really cool things in the world that I think need to be made. Things that if they were not made, our world would have a lack, a gap. And so these creative artists, these creative individuals have found within themselves these ideas to make a thing in the world that didn't exist. And now it does exist, or now it's about to exist. And I want to highlight them. I want to celebrate them, and I want to talk to them about it. So without any further ado, then I've already done, because I tend to over-ado, I would like to invite onto the show, join me in welcoming the one, the only, as far as I know, Gattison. What's up,
Hey,
Gattison?
hey,
Welcome to the
good to see
altar.
you.
Am I
Thank you
correct
for having me.
in saying that you are the one and the only? Have you ever run into another Gattison?
I mean, I've run into, because interesting story,
Okay, tell
Gaddison
me.
is
Hit me
actually
with it.
my last name.
Okay.
And so I have run into other Gaddisons,
Okay.
but I've never heard anybody use it as their first name.
Okay. So
Yeah.
you're right. You're the
So
one
I
and the
am
only.
the only.
Yeah, you are the one
Yeah.
and the only. It's
Yeah.
like Cher was Cher's last name, and I don't actually know if that's true or not.
Well, what is it that you told me? You said
I might
real
have did
name.
the same bit last time we talked.
You did.
I'm a one trick pony, man. I get one bit and I just ride that thing down.
And I totally believed it.
Gattison, really quick before we get to the less important matters, let's start with the most important matters, which is what is your answer to the question? What's the food item or meal that you have more than anything else?
You know, I actually resonate with you on the burrito
Yes.
pick.
Yeah.
Tacos actually don't do it for me. I don't
Oh,
know what it
go
is.
on.
I mean, I
Tell
could
me more.
have yeah, I could have a taco, but there's just something about the satisfaction of it all being wrapped
Yes.
in one thing.
Contained.
I don't like the openness. You
Yeah.
know, like I'm not about the openness. It's just it changes the flavor.
Yeah. It changes the flavor. All that extra oxygen getting in. It
It's just too
oxygenates
much.
the carne asada. And what about, are you a hot sauce guy on your burrito?
No, not really.
Okay,
I'm not.
okay,
I'm
okay.
not a hot sauce person. Mild maybe, you know, but I really like chunky sauces that
Mm-hmm.
like the tomatoes
Mm-hmm.
and the
Mm-hmm.
you know that kind of stuff. But I hot, no.
Yeah, I love the hot.
Do
I
you?
oh yeah, I will ask like Mexican restaurants when I get the burrito, like they'll have the different little cups, you know, and I'll ask for the
Yeah.
habanero or the spiciest one, and they're like,
Uh,
"Are you sure, sir?"
you
I'm
sure?
like, no, just give it to me. It'll be fine. And then I do, you know, with each bite, I pour a healthy sized dollop of hot sauce onto the bite. So I go through about 4 or 5 of those little cups of salsa per burrito, and
Oh,
I
that's
have zero
amazing.
shame in that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, you should never have shame around it.
No, thank you. I feel free from that.
I support you.
Man, thanks for thank you. I feel it in my heart. Okay, so Gattison, before you came on, I shared that I'm doing a series here in March called Makers in March, where people
Yeah.
that I really respect are making really cool things. And so, if I want to eventually talk about the thing that you're making, we're gonna get there. But I
Yeah.
want us to travel on a journey before we get there,
Mhm.
so that by the time we get there, the pot of gold will feel even more magnificent and glorious. Okay.
Yeah.
So without giving the whole pot away, eventually we're going to get to you as worship leader who wants to create spaces for progressive Christian, post-evangelical, ex-evangelical individuals to have space to worship. And that's
Yes.
like, you're making that. But
Yes.
before we can talk about that, let's back the whole train up.
Mhm.
And I don't need your birth story unless it's a really exciting birth story. But
It's very exciting.
but can you share with us, like, let's talk about a bit about who you are. Like, where'd you come from? What makes a Gattison?
Yeah. Well, actually, just a
Mhm.
sprinkle of goodness. No, I actually was, you know, I'm from the Bay Area. So was born in Oakland, raised in a smaller town called Richmond, here in California. And yeah, most of my family is out there. I was kind of raised up in this, um, you know, Black Pentecostal space.
Mm.
So my great grandfather and great grandmother they started a church, and you know, they would, you know, back in the day they would hold these revivals, and you know, all of the churches around would shut down their services and come to this small little church, and it'd be
Wow.
packed out.
Wow.
And my great grandmother and great grandfather, their kids, so my grandmother and her brothers and sisters, they were all singers and musicians. And my actually, fun fact, my great aunt, she was the original singer of the song "Oh Happy Day." So you remember in Sister Act when they sing the "Oh Happy Day"
Yeah.
song?
Yeah.
My aunt, she was the one that sang that, and she sang that at I think she was 21 years old when she did that, and they didn't
What a
even
trip.
think that it was going to be a thing. They
Sure.
just wanted
Sure.
to go to a competition in on the East Coast, and so they
That's
sang that
fun.
song. Anyway,
So music
um,
and church runs deep in your blood.
deep.
Okay.
Yeah,
So you grew up in church, what, we're talking multiple times a week, I presume?
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, multiple
Okay.
times a week for
Because
sure.
I have a loose connection to white Pentecostalism, and I know how intense that can be, and so I can only
Yes.
imagine that adding the layer
Uh-huh.
of black Pentecost like just ratchets it up to. It was your life, I
Oh,
imagine.
it was life. It was exciting. There were some beautiful things
Yeah,
a
sure.
part of that experience, and some things that I would never trade for anything. And then just like anything else, there's also the toxic side of some of that stuff. And as my story unfolds, that's where all of that begins to come into play.
Yeah. So before we get there, so you got music in the blood, you've got church in the blood, and
Yeah.
so you grew up going to these services multiple times a week, and
Yeah.
what the impression that I get is that like worship, specifically this sort of church experience of music and the arts mixed with
Yeah.
spirituality with some dashes of religious ideas, all created this glorious cocktail that hugely shaped who you are and like who you're becoming. So tell me a
Yes.
little bit about this place that worship has had in your heart. And you can either speak present if you still feel like that's true, or you can talk about where it used to be, or you can talk about where it is now. Like just talk to me
Yeah.
about your relationship with worship.
For sure. So kind of growing up in that space, there was like this, it was heavily rooted in gospel music. So, you talk about singers, we call them singers,
Oh, okay.
it's like
It took me 2 times to understand. Yes. Sangas.
singers,
Uh-huh.
people who just,
Hmm.
and gospel music is so rooted in kind of this gut cry, right? Like this, you go all in when you praise, when you worship, when you leave nothing on the table, right? Like you leave, you hold nothing back. And so that's the kind of environment I grew up in as far as praise and worship was concerned. And so I learned at a really young age that the lady that was running around the church, the man that was crying out to God, the teens that were on the altar, crying out to God, like all of those were just signs of this desire to really let God know with every fiber of our being that God is just worthy of all of this praise and
Mm.
this worship. And so that really shaped how I viewed worship. And so kind of moving into my adult years when I started to take being a worship leader more seriously, and stepped into that leadership role, it just came natural.
Yeah.
And then, as my story unfolded, which I won't talk about right at this particular moment, but as my story unfolded, it just gave me that much more reason to say, I just won't hold anything back from God. I won't hold my praise back. I won't hold my worship back, because God deserves it all. So that's definitely what shaped my perspective on worship and praise.
I love it. And so does Corey, who says he's talking my language. Yes.
Come on, brother.
So as we were doing the sound check, Gattison, I was goofing around and singing something, and you made some comment about me singing, and I said like that was my first career, and you pretended to not know, even though I know that I know that you know my background and my history, but I was a worship leader for like 15 years. Like that was my first career. So I came to have this. I tell this story in my first book, UnClobber,
Yeah.
that the thing that sort of set my life on the trajectory that I am today was being a senior in high school and going to this event and being confronted with this reality that I was just a Christian in name only and didn't really have any relationship with God of the kind that I was out there on the streets witnessing to people and just pretending like I knew what I was talking about. And so that was the week that I made some significant commitments to what I wanted to do and be with my life. And that was also the week that for the first time I became aware of the power that these corporate worship gatherings could harness to connect us with God. Now, back then I might have had different language, like different ways to talk about it. I would have,
Right.
Whereas now I might broaden some of that language. I might sort of take off some of the edges, but the point is worship way back then was one of the primary drivers of connection for me to the divine.
Right.
And I knew that was something that I wanted to be a part of helping other people to experience. And so I learned how to play guitar in college, and I started singing, and I joined the choir in college, and I was a horrible worship leader. Well, I was a horrible singer for the, whatever. Nobody can come out the womb, especially not wait till 17 years old and start singing and be good at it. It was really bad for years. But eventually I got pretty good at this specific art of leading worship, which might sound weird to say being good at. All I mean by that is that I understood the power that music and art and movement, and like I understood that these are things not just in the church world. Like the church doesn't have, in my opinion, a monopoly on the power of music and art and collective embodied movement. Like you go to people go to concerts and they say, Lady Gaga, move me. Like I want to be manipulated by the music. I want to be taken on a journey. I want to have an experience. I want to feel it. And so anyway, I was a worship leader for like 15 years in Oregon, and then Arizona, and then down here in San Diego. And it was only when Kate and I started Sojourn that I shifted away from full-time worship leader to then kind of like more teaching pastor who moonlit as a worship leader. So it's deep in me as well. It doesn't go generations deep as it does for you. But it's like this idea of worship and the power of it and the longing, because part of it for me, Gattison, is I can still, like when I get real quiet, I can still connect with that 17-year-old version of myself who for the first time just sensed this overwhelming presence, like from the crown of my head down to the balls of my feet. I could feel this sensation that whatever we could neurologically explain away if we want to. That's fine. It all belongs. Like, of course it's going to be connected to the brain. We are creatures whose brains does all the things for us. And maybe that's how God wants to work. Okay. I'm going on long enough. All that to say, I'm with you on the power of worship. And I share some of your history. And then something happened to both of us. Different, but similar. And the similarities, I'll just say the similarities are, we found a type of disillusionment with some of the more conservative religious packaging that was handed to us and that we lived for many years. And so we've moved away from some of that. That's similarities. But some of the differences, I now want to turn back to you to share what was some of the things that sort of propelled and launched you out of some of the more conservative religious spaces of your youth.
Oh God, that's such a huge question. But I will say, just for context, I started to go to a kind of like a discipleship program. Naturally, my faith really meant a lot to me. But I also knew when I was younger and growing up that that I was gay. And so, those two things back in the day and that traditional, I guess now, in that traditional space don't mix. And specifically with my experience, there was a heavy emphasis on that homosexuality was an abomination, and that it was just heresy to even, to think about being gay and Christian. Like, are you kidding me? That's like not even a thing.
Not even a thing.
It's just not a thing. So my understanding of the options and the choices that I had
Yeah.
were either you pick your faith and God, or you pick your sexuality. And faith was seen as like, you know, hey, if you pick God, you are selfless and you are, you know, you're doing the Lord's work.
Yeah.
But if you pick your sexuality, then you're selfish and you are only going with the lust of the flesh, and therefore you're on your way to hell.
Mm.
And I tell you, Colby, when they talked about hell back in the day, man,
Wasn't pretty.
in the churches that I grew up in, it was like they described it to you like you saw the movie screen in front of you. It was a vivid picture. And I remember this one guy who talked about hell, and he visited hell. And so he went.
Wait, what?
he said there were different compartments.
Wait, what?
You said,
Like for
yeah,
real?
oh, yeah.
Like with
Oh,
a
no,
straight
no, no, no,
face,
no, no.
he stood up and he said, "I have been to hell and back." Like,
Oh, convinced, right? And I'm telling you, like, he talked about it to the point where he was like, there are different compartments. And so he went compartment by compartment of hell and described it and what was there and what was happening and what you would experience and all kinds of stuff. So, and this is stuff that I listened to when I was like 8, 9 years old. So you can imagine the dissonance that created inside of me, right? Along with the idea that, you know, the way that the church, in my experience, the way that the church talked about homosexuality is that, you may be familiar with this, like, you know, those thoughts that cross your mind, those thoughts aren't yours. And so what happened is, as a young boy, I learned to disassociate with myself.
wow.
So, and with my sexuality. So I would have these thoughts and then I would be like, oh, that's not mine. So I'd compartmentalize it, right? That's not mine. And then I do this other thing. So you can imagine, I say all of that to say, you can imagine the dissonance that would create in me as a child. So when I move on to, you know, my college years, where I went on to, you know, go to this Bible program, discipleship program, this is kind of where I started my journey of cutting my teeth on. I went from gospel music, heavy praise and worship, to it was my first time I heard about Hillsong. And I was like, what is this? What is this Hillsong you speak of?
Did you like it right out the gate? Was this a good experience, or was
it, you know, it was so interesting to me because in gospel music, it's very emotional and it's very repetitive. And so we'll sing one line for 10 minutes, you know, because the lead person will kind of riff off and do their own thing and kind of bring color and light to the one line that you're singing, right? But with Hillsong, it was so wordy and it was so descriptive that I was like, wow, this is almost like poetry. Like they basically wrote a poem and they put it in the form of a song. And so it was very intriguing to me. And I really did like it. It was different for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, so I went into that Bible space and, you know, ended up, I say all that to say that I ended up getting married to a woman. There's so many things that I could say that happened between that, but essentially I was trying to pray the gay away. I had leaders that said, basically, once you, I mean, I don't know how real you want me to get, but once you, I'm just going to be me. Authenticity. But
this is
once you have sex,
the show has no rating. Yeah, you're fine.
Okay. Once you have sex with a woman, like your gayness will basically just melt off. I had people saying to me that, like, you know, it'll kind of just work itself out. You know, the more you're connected to fasting, praying, and the like, you know, God, the closer you get to God, the closer you start to, the more you start to look like God, and God looks straight. So, so yeah, the goal was to be straight. Yeah. And so what was happening is that I learned how to be more, I learned how to kind of, how would I say? I learned how to be a bit more, like control that aspect of my life. And, you know, I mean, there's so many more things I could say about that, but for the sake of time, we ended up getting married. I was married to a woman for just shy of 9 years. And in that time, we had two beautiful kids that are literally the most beautiful human beings on this planet.
Yeah.
And I know everybody can't agree with that because, you know, everybody has their own whatever. But in my world, they're the most beautiful,
Heck yeah.
just wonderful humans.
Heck yeah. Okay. Thank you
So much.
first of all, for all the things you just shared there. Like, it is lovely. You are lovely. Corey, who earlier said you were talking his language about the gospel music and the worship. Then as you started to share your story, said I resonate heavily with this experience. Dave Crothers says, I came from a Pentecostal background too. Completely agree. It was not good back in the day when they talked about hell. Oh,
Listen, they talked about that thing.
Scare the hell right out of you, or at least try to. And then Dave add, I liked Hillsong, but not so much anymore.
Yeah. Right now.
Yeah. Okay. So this compartmentalized. So Corey emphasized that too. So this compartmentalized thing you were doing. So you learned to sort of disassociate as a young kid between these thoughts and between who you thought you were supposed to be.
Yeah.
And then you get to college and you explained a minute ago that you thought you had two options.
Yeah.
That one option was to continue to essentially be a Christian. And you were given a predictable script. You were given a Mad Lib with all the words already filled in for you, right?
Yep.
Choose an adjective. No, we've already chosen it for you. Choose a noun. No, sorry, move on. Choose an adverb.
Yep.
All right, you can have an adverb. No, don't pick that adverb. Like, the Mad Lib was already filled out for you. You can be a Christian, or you can turn your back, flip the bird to all that, and be a false
prophet.
Be a false, or just anything that is not whatever this thing was. And you, I imagine, coming from this long line that you did of people who were deeply rooted in their faith, deeply rooted in their church, deeply rooted in their community, like community, family, church were probably synonymous, I would imagine. Like those are all just one and the same words.
Yep.
So it wasn't even just a choice for you to be a Christian or to be a heretic. Like, it was choosing everything you knew, your family, your community, a future where you could have grandkids or where you could be a part of a larger family. Like, Gattison, do you want that, or do you want to be alone and maybe one day visit one of these compartments of hell that you learned about? Like, so this is what's presented to you. And I guess what I'm getting at is you made the logical choice. You really did.
Yeah.
Like, you made the choice that anyone would make under those circumstances. And as you and I know from doing this work for so long now, the choice that most people have made.
Yes.
And
Definitely.
I think what's important, why this is coming up for me, is because in some of these deconstruction or post-evangelical or whatever spaces that we find ourselves in, I want us to continually normalize that those choices that you made, on one hand, weren't entirely your choices, which is to say, the extent that you had free will in any of that is really sketch. Like, you were given a version of the world. You were sort of told what to believe. It wasn't really, you weren't this blank slate that sort of got to turn 18 and then be like, and now what would you like to think about the world? That isn't true for any of us. So you didn't really have free will in that sense.
Yeah.
And even the extent that you did have a choice, you made the one that made sense. You made the one that led to life for you and not to death.
Yes.
But now when you look back on that, what do you do with that version of yourself? How do you hold that version of yourself? What do you say to that 20-year-old Gattison who's figuring out how to merge Hillsong with the gospel music of his roots, and then also, like, I think I should probably try to like a girl and make it work. Like, what do you say to that? I should
kind of be straight.
I should figure this out. I just wish you had more role models, like, because culture just doesn't really give us much indication of what straightness looks like. It's really hard out there.
Yeah, it's hard on the streets.
What does it look like to be straight? Who knows? So challenging. But no, like,
where's
what do you?
The blueprint?
We have no TV shows, no music, no songs, no movies. It's hard to know how to be straight. No, jokes aside. Okay, so what do you say to that 20-year-old version of yourself now when you look back?
Yeah. So, I mean, to be really honest, I hold that side of me really close
Yeah.
because I think that a lot of times, not only do sometimes culturally in our community can we demonize that choice, right? To kind of go into that Christian world and it's like, yo, that's so bad for you. Why would you do that?
Right.
But I think as anybody who's been in that situation and come out of that situation, I think some of the harshest critics can be ourselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that we made that choice, right? To the extent that we were able to have that free will, we made that choice, right? And so for me at least, I at first I was really hard on myself that I
Okay.
even made the choice. I was hard on myself that I didn't ask questions earlier. I was hard on myself that I didn't at 18 years old have the wisdom to question. And it sounds, honestly, it sounds really silly right now, but it's like the wisdom at 18 years old to challenge and question everything that I had been taught
Doesn't
up until
exist.
that point
That
for
doesn't exist. Yeah.
almost 2 decades.
Nope.
I didn't have the wisdom to challenge that. Of course I didn't. I
Yep.
mean, there's so many things that I did at 18 that I wouldn't necessarily do now.
Mm-hmm.
Or wouldn't, at least if I did it, I wouldn't think it was wise.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so I hold that part of myself with tender love and care because like you said, I did the best with what I had at the moment. And when you know better, you do better. And so now I know a lot more. And so I do a lot better. And I think that's what we need to, in my opinion, I think that's what we need to do as a community, right? At large. I think, specifically in the affirming and inclusive and progressive spaces, but just in the LGBTQ community at large, I think we need to hold people with love and care because everybody's just trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
And a lot of us have been traumatized in a lot of different ways. And it's really hard to leave everything that you've ever known.
Mm-hmm.
These church communities were everything. I mean, these are mothers, fathers, grandmothers, aunties, uncles. Like, what I mean? Like, these are just everybody that I knew. So to leave that was no joke. And especially when I decided to leave it, I was married to a woman, had 2 kids. Like,
All right.
I was a traveling worship leader. Like, I mean, it's just, you don't just leave it. Like, that was my career. That was everything.
Yeah. So take me, if you want, take me to
Yeah.
some of those moments where you are married, you do have kids. So we know you've at least tried sex with a woman at least twice, if my math is correct.
At least twice.
At least twice, if not more.
The second was a turkey baster.
It's one and done. That's
you said it wasn't rated. So.
And it seems like it didn't work. It didn't fix you.
No.
It didn't remove your orientation. It didn't like reorient you towards someone who suddenly is exclusively innately attracted towards women. Like it didn't work. And we know this. Yeah. We know this doesn't work. Yeah. And what I often will invite people to consider, because you do have some individuals out there that their testimony is different. Their testimony is, no, I let myself be gay for X number of years and then I'm not anymore. And, things can be said about that, which is to say, maybe they find themselves somewhere in the middle of the spectrum and they actually do have capacity to have an intimate and connective relationship with people of different sexes. So that could, not that we need to explain away those testimonies, because that is what that is. Right. But it doesn't provide for me, and it shouldn't provide for any of us this, therefore it worked for these 4 people in these evangelical spaces. Therefore, if it hasn't worked for you yet, it's still because you're not doing it right. Well, no, you're one of so many that I've talked to that are like, bro, I did all the things they told me to do. Like, this isn't a thing that I don't need to change. I don't need to change. Yeah. So how did you finally get to that point, and how did you, like, what did you do with that conviction?
Yeah. Yeah. So, after a lot of men's purity groups,
Oof.
after, the ones where stay with all the gay guys and they tell you how, it's because you don't have the love of a father, and they explain why you're gay and you just whatever. After that one, then they sent me to the men's purity group where you just need to be around straight guys, right? And you need to be able to get a hug from a straight guy, and you need to not feel anything but bro energy. And so did that, and that didn't work. And so then they said, listen, you need the demon cast out of you, so we're going to send you to our prayer partners. And so they did, and then that didn't work. And then they said fast and pray more. They said all of the things. And after radical accountability and honesty with Allie, which context, Allie knew before we were even dating, which is my ex-wife. She knew even before we were ever dating that I was attracted to men, but our understanding of homosexuality is that it was kind of like a cancer, right? You can pray it away. You can be healed from it. And so with that understanding, she was willing to go on that journey with me, and I committed to giving radical honesty to her, which looked like every time that I had a thought, or every time I looked at porn or anything like that, I would have a conversation with her about it. Anybody who thinks through that, that's probably not a great idea. For a number of different reasons on both ends. But that's what we practiced for 9 years, that I would go up to her every time anything would happen, and I would let her know, and we would talk through it. So you know what it was for me? I committed at the beginning of this process that I was going to go all in. Okay. I was going to give, remember I talked about gospel music and how it literally was just, you give everything, you leave nothing left on the table. I approached homosexuality the same way, being healed of homosexuality the same way. I put everything on the table. If I went to every program, every sermon, every whatever, I made sure that I was there. And because I didn't want it to be this thing of like, I always wondered in the back of my mind, if I could have done something more, if I just would have prayed more, fasted more, if I would have. And so by the time I came to this point where I started to challenge or think through some of my beliefs and, starting to deconstruct, it wasn't, I had no doubt that what I was doing wasn't working.
There was nothing, there was no stone left for you to turn over. Like, you tried it all. You tried it all, and the fruit was not what had been told you. So what did that look like then? Were you, tell me how those, you don't have to get all the way into it, but maybe here's a different question. Where are you now? And what are you up to now in the world? Because you're not, you mentioned that Allie's your ex-wife. So you made the decision to, as Gwyneth Paltrow calls it, consciously decouple. And I remember us all like mocking her back when that phrase first came out. And now we're like, wait a minute, that's kind of a cool way to describe this mutual decision to send each other off into a scenario in which they can thrive in ways that they maybe never could have thrived. So anyway, you and Allie separated, right?
Yes.
Divorced.
Yes.
And where are you now? What are you up to now?
So on February 21st of 2017, the conscious decoupling, we call it, our love allowed us to liberate each other to be authentically who we were created to be. And so the marriage and the relationship wasn't fair for her, and it wasn't fair for me. She wasn't meant to be in a relationship with a gay man, and I wasn't meant to be in a relationship with a straight woman. And so on that day, as friends, we liberated each other to authentically be the best version of ourselves. And so we decided to hold on to our family while at the same time letting each other go romantically. And so so now I am, we co-parent. I am a worship leader at a church here in SoCal in North Hollywood, Toluca Lake to be exact. And that actually was a process that I didn't just jump out of that into worship.
Yeah.
To be frank,
Yeah.
all of our relationships, for the most part, got cut off. So we lost a lot of friends, a lot
So
of relationships in
that
church.
was your experience when
Oh,
you
yeah.
when you chose to not split between being gay and being Christian, but merge them.
Yeah.
How many of your fears came to fruition because you were afraid, like, I might lose some family, some community, some job
Yeah.
opportunities? Like,
Yeah.
you had some loss, it sounds like.
Yeah. Yeah. Jobs, forget about it. Anything in the
Okay.
church, like that was
Okay.
just done. It was just, it was just done.
I'm
So,
so
and
sorry.
yeah, it sucked because I think, the thing that stings, and anybody who's kind of been there, you spend your life, or what feels like you spend your life pouring into this institution, right? The church. And with one break from the common understanding, you feel discarded, thrown away, and easily replaced. And so I think that's really stung because, I didn't spend my college years going to learn a trade, right?
Right.
Like, I spent those years investing in the church and people. And so that stung. A lot of our community and relationships went through the ringer. I mean, people who we were really close with, and the specific kind of vein of the church that we were in, which was at this point, it was more the charismatic church. We were, family was a really big thing, right? Like, find community and find family and plug in and, give your life to just really do life with people.
Mm-hmm.
And so we did that, and for years, and so those people kind of didn't know how to process that and deal with it. And in a sense, to be fair, it was almost like they came out as well, because people in the church, as you would expect, they didn't want to talk to us, Allie and I. They wanted to talk to the person closest to us. And so they kind of found themselves in this position where they were speaking for us and became kind of the representation of, and the ambassadors of the choice that we made, which was unfortunate for them, and also still sucked that they didn't support us. So it kind of was what it was.
I'm both so sorry for your losses and so glad for your gains, because
Yes.
I mean, it's just both and, right? You probably wish you never would have gone through it, and yet also was one of the greatest things that's ever happened.
Yes.
Was that sort of decision to let love liberate each other. But you mentioned, Gattison, that you're now a worship leader.
Yeah.
How and why? You're supposed to be jaded. You're supposed to be bitter. You're supposed to look at this church that has turned its back on you and said you're an abomination that is designated for this one particular compartment of hell that this one guy went to one time and tried to warn you about, and you said, never mind, I want to go there. You're supposed to not want to have anything to do with any of this anymore. What's wrong with you? Why are you?
I don't know.
No, I'm kidding. Nothing's wrong with you. So tell me now, share with me, what is it about you that now, why are you showing up on Sundays at a church of all places to continue to do this worship leading thing? Why?
Yeah, two reasons. One is that I made the journey, and I think all of us in some way, shape, or form have to kind of make this journey as we deconstruct from a fear-based faith to a love-based faith.
Okay.
And
love that.
Because what motivated me specifically to take that journey was that it was a bit of defiance, to be really honest with you. I refused. There was something inside of me that was like, I refuse to allow the church, the institution of the church, to have that much power over me,
right.
that they get to
That's
decide
right.
that I have to make a choice between my faith and my
Yeah.
sexuality. That's not a
No,
choice
thank you. Mm-mm.
that they
Mm-mm.
should be able to present to me. That's a choice, and that's something that's between God and I. And so I just refuse to put the church in the position of God, and I put God in his rightful place, and I dethroned the church, which needed to happen anyway. And in my dethroning the church and taking them off the throne that God was supposed to be on, I placed God back on the throne, and I said, okay, let's take a journey together. And so in that journey, I started to identify all of the spaces that really my love for God was really fear of what God would do if I didn't obey, if I didn't
Well said.
follow the rules. And I started to work with God on, like, this idea of, if there really is no condemnation in Christ Jesus,
That's not a
then I
thing. Where'd you
started
get
to
that
identify.
from? Are you making
I
stuff
mean,
up?
am I making it up? It's in the book.
It's in the Bible.
It's in the book.
Yeah.
So in
What if you
that,
took that seriously, right? What if you
I
took that
mean, yeah.
there
What if you
is no
actually took that
condemnation?
serious?
Yeah.
Right. And then I started to learn the difference between condemnation and conviction, right? And reframing and reclaiming some of these words, right? Condemnation really is this negative, like, you're horrible, you're going to hell, it's over for you, you might as well stop now. But conviction of the Holy Spirit really is about understanding that God has a desire and a better way and a better whatever for you, and that you can learn about how to best maximize and utilize and operate in the kingdom of God. And so it's never about condemning you or saying that you're not worth it, or you might as well just give up. It's always about pulling you up to a higher place. And so when I started to make that distinction, I started to identify all the places where really I had been under the thumb of condemnation, and I started to make the switch into a love-based faith. And once I made the switch into a love-based faith, really grace was more accessible to me. I actually could take advantage of, in the best way possible, I could access grace. And that meant that it was going to get a little messy before I figured my way out, but that's kind of what grace is for, so that you can actually figure things out and walk through this life and walk through it with God. And I have some stories that I, walked with God through some situations, and I felt more authentic. I felt more connected to God, and I had never felt closer to God than I felt in those moments of the quote unquote messy situations that the church wouldn't make room for.
Yeah. Oh, well said. Thanks for sharing. So then you haven't forsaken the church.
No.
You haven't forsaken God.
No.
You've even discovered that maybe those two got inverted along the way.
Yeah.
Perhaps through no fault of your own, as we talked about earlier in the show. Yeah. And this foundational aspect of this thing called worship, this experience of, and we're using it maybe in this context very narrowly, intentionally. So we just mean sort of the corporate gathering of people who have shown up with the hope that they might somehow be opened to a connection with God, and that we found music and we found arts and we found collective sort of syncing up of our breaths they work together to do that in a mysterious way that we don't fully understand. And as you know, because I've shared with you a bit, our journey these last 8 years at Kate and Mine's church, the one we started here in San Diego, Sojourn Grace Collective, which is primarily made up of the kind of people that have this deconstruction background or sort of leaving or been kicked out of their more conservative spaces. We have found the ritual of worship to be clunky, for lack of a better word, challenging, difficult, fraught with landmines, because there's so many words and ideas that can trigger us, that can activate these old stories, these old wounds, these old narratives that you're a piece of garbage, unworthy of anything. And aren't you lucky that some dude died on a cross and all you got to do is have a particular idea in your brain and then suddenly you're okay with the divine. And if you don't have that, by the way, we also mean if you have all these other things that are true about you, we don't really talk about that, then you will be forever separated from God. And so we sing one song in a space that even though our theology might have shifted, we sing one song and it has a word or a phrase that just brings back online all of these, why do I suddenly feel now activated and like I'm a terrible human again? And so worship in these sorts of spaces has just been really complicated for really good reasons. And yet in the midst of all that, and some people are glad to see it behind, like they move on and they're like, I don't need it anymore. It's cool that you do, but I'm good. Then there are others, and my wife is like this, and I could be like this at times, and I know you can, who are like, but I miss. There's something about this worship experience that I miss, that I long for. So then, as our show comes to a conclusion here, tell me about this thing that's been bubbling up in your heart to make, because this is my series Makers in March, and you're making something that I'm really excited about, and I really want you to tell people about, because I think it is needed. So tell us about it, Gattison.
Awesome. So basically, created this organization called All In. And All In is really about kind of curating conversations and events centered around worship. And so, you know, when we talk about the triggers and the trauma that you were just explaining that sometimes happens to us when we come into those worship spaces, you know, part of what I really wanted to do was be able to walk with people or help people, resource people, give them tools to be able to make the journey, identifying some of the triggers and trauma when it comes to worship, and then walking with them and giving them tools to get to freedom and healing, right? Because I think it's important for us to identify and acknowledge our triggers and trauma when it comes to worship, and also to remember that the goal is to find freedom from our triggers and trauma and move into a better place. And I think that what we try to do at All In is inspire people to understand that there is more, and that we actually are living in a beautiful time right now where we get to mold, shape, and cultivate and curate what worship looks like in our affirming and progressive context. And so, you know, in my space here in LA, what I found was that there was a lot of my friends and a lot of people that I knew that, you know, they would go to these affirming and inclusive churches, and listen, we have the love and the welcome thing down to a T.
We've got it.
Yo,
kindness.
We're so good. We are like, we're getting an A++++, okay? And right. And one of the things that I've heard people say that they wish was in the affirming space is this idea of kind of corporate worship. And a lot of times, because we have identified that there's a lot of triggers and trauma, people who have felt that way in our spaces, we've kind of steered away from the corporate worship thing. And a lot of churches out here are even doing more like, you know, secular music in place of the kind of traditional worship songs and stuff like that, or the traditional worship format, which I love a good moment in worship where there's, you know, a quote unquote secular song. I love a good Alicia Keys in the middle of the set. You know, no one can get in the way of what I feel for you. I love a good Swedish House Mafia. You know, see, heaven's got a plan for you. Don't you worry, child. I love all of that. I'm in that. I've done that. I'm about that life. And also, anytime we box an expression in because of wounding, we may want to revisit how we express that. And so anyway, it kind of left out these people who did want to kind of get that corporate expression. And so what happened is that people had to really brace themselves as they walk into non-affirming spaces just to kind of get that connection. And so, hints, you're not going to be welcome, you're not whatever. And this is probably one of the most vulnerable spiritual things that you'll be doing. And so here you are trying to open up yourself vulnerably, spiritually, and you know that these people are not going to accept you if they see the authentic version of you. And
not
we
ideal.
created All In. Yeah.
Yes.
So we created All In, and so we're not only creating conversations, but we're curating worship experiences, and we have one coming up on March 25th, which I'm really excited about.
March 25th, there it is, baby. So Friday, March 25th, you're gonna launch your inaugural All In worship experience.
Yes, it's gonna be epic. And
who should come to this?
I feel like, to be really honest with you, if you are somebody who, kind of misses that corporate worship, you should come. Also, if you feel triggered and you feel like you have some trauma around worship, I actually would invite you to come. We're really working to make it a safe space, including we're going to have some of the things that we're actually doing besides just saying it's a safe space.
Yeah.
We are actually going to have people who specialize in helping people through trauma. We're going to have them on site so that if you feel something, you can actually, go to this person, if you need to just step out with them, talk through something, whatever, that they'll actually be on site.
I love that.
We'll have a few people doing that. So we really do want to make it a safe space, and we want to help people. The goal is to help people identify their triggers and trauma and walk with them through to the other side of healing, so that we can form and reframe and reclaim worship, because there is a generation coming up behind us that we need to create a safe space for them. And as long as we're still kind of muddling in our trauma, I don't know how effectively we can create that safe space for the generation coming up.
Well, freaking said. Gattison, is there a website where people can learn more about All In and figure out how to attend this thing?
Yes. So our website is going to be launching next week. Do you
have the URL?
Yes, we go.
Oh, you're telling me right now. So I interrupted you when you were in the process of it. I should have just waited. It's great. Now you have to say it one more time.
That's great. Come on, Colby.
I'm typing it in to put it on the screen. So
yes,
one more time.
No, we go all in.org. We go all in.org. And so next Friday, we will launch the website. I'm really excited about it. And today, if you go on Instagram at 6 p.m. tonight, Pacific Standard Time, the Instagram is going to be launched. So, and that is at We Go All In org.
At We Go All In. We Go All In. I love it.
We Go All In org. Yeah.
So the Instagram handle includes the org.
Yes.
Okay.
Just no dot.
Don't dot that handle.
Don't dot it.
Don't dot it. And so your first one is going to be up in LA. Is it in LA? Like, LA is big. So what part of LA?
It's in North Hollywood, specifically Toluca Lake, at the church that I'm leading worship at.
Sweet.
Harmony Church.
All right. And I'm going to be there. I'm coming up.
You're going to be there?
I am coming up to be a part of it.
Ah!
I'm going to be there. I'm going to get my worship on, and it's going to be exciting. And I can't wait to be a part of it. Gattison, I'm really grateful for you. I'm glad our paths crossed all those years ago. We got that breakfast together before the world shut down. I'm glad we've stayed in touch. And I'm just really freaking proud of you. I'm grateful for your voice in this space. I'm grateful for your courage. I'm grateful for how you are inviting us to move from a faith rooted in fear to one that is grounded in love. And thank you for helping us to sort of redeem and reclaim and restore this practice of worship so that we can once again have this as part of our spiritual lives. It is needed. Yes. It is good. It is holy. Thanks for joining me on the altar today, man.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. All right. We'll see you. I'll see you in person in a couple weeks. All right, buddy. Everybody else, go follow at Gattison Official. Go follow at We Go All In org. And then eventually, and bookmark wegoallin.org so that when the website is live, you will have all the deets. All right. Sam says that he thinks that All In is a great idea. We agree, Sam. Shane says, thank you so much, Gattison. Melanie says, thank you, Gattison. Vince, Gattison, your smile is vigorous. Ooh, I like that.
Oh,
Vigorous.
thank you.
That's a good word for that. You can keep that Mad Lib open for those adjectives.
Yeah.
Dave does have a question. Will it be online? Is there any plan to stream All In?
So we, if you lock into the Instagram, we will show parts of it.
Okay.
But because it's going to be such a cool creative space, we're going to save it because we want to kind of move around with it. So
Love it.
unfortunately, we will not be streaming it full on, but you'll see little behind the scenes stuff for sure.
Understandable. All right, friend. Until next time, have a good one.
All right. Take care.
Thanks, buddy. Bye-bye. So I hope you now know why I call Gattison a friend and why I think he's just making some really cool things in the world. So I'm stoked to be a part of All In with him coming up at the end of March, the last Friday in March. Thanks for joining me today on this special Tuesday edition of The Altar. I'm going to be back next week on Wednesday, like the norms, with my buddy Brandon Robertson, who's got his new book just came out, Filled to be Emptied. It's an exploration of how it is that we might, as Christians, use the privileges that we have. We are filled up with privileges so that we might pour it out and empty it for the well-being and the betterment of others. So that's coming up next week. And then some point in March, my buddy Scott Erickson, I keep asking him to pick a date in March and we just haven't landed on one yet. But he's going to be here to talk about his new book. And then Brenda Davies from God is Gray is going to be joining me as well in March. So anyway, all that and more. Follow me. Subscribe if you're watching on YouTube, like if you're watching on Facebook, just so that you get alerted to all the good things that are going on here at the altar. Everyone, have a wonderful week. I'm really glad. Susan, you only got to see part of it. Well, you're going to enjoy the rest of it because Gattison is an incredible human and it was fun. Vince, no worries. I think it's happened to a couple people on this show, autocorrects taking over and not wanting Gattison to exist, but insisting that it's Garrison. I'm sure Gattison gets that a lot with the world of autocorrect. Thank you, Brooke. Good to have you. All right, everyone. Have a wonderful week. We'll see you next week on Wednesday. Bye-bye.